Oh, yeah.
This battle going closed today. No barking. Drive around it.
Oh, they got multiple. Oh, yeah. Look at all those vehicles.
No parking signs everywhere.
We might have to find a parking spot. There's some people parking down there.
All right. Well,
A couple trucks over there.
Green first.
Yeah. Oh, is there a little gathering over there? No, that's... What is that?
Group of people at Buckman's. That's cool. Let's go there.
Oh, yeah.
This battle going closed today. No barking. Drive around it.
Oh, they got multiple. Oh, yeah. Look at all those vehicles.
No parking signs everywhere.
We might have to find a parking spot. There's some people parking down there.
All right. Well,
A couple trucks over there.
Green first.
Yeah. Oh, is there a little gathering over there? No, that's... What is that?
Group of people at Buckman's. That's cool. Let's go there. Let's park on Merriam Street.
Yeah, we can probably go on that side. No one's, you know...
Yeah.
We're going to do cordon off the whole downtown.
There's a meter right there. Let's go for it.
See you back here again.
This has turned into a different kind of day, huh?
It certainly has, especially waking up this morning and finding out everything's been thrown into chaos in the neighboring towns.
Yes. Yes. And they don't want any big gathering on the green, apparently, with their signage.
But oddly enough, I guess it'll be okay if we gather around the green.
So that'll work.
Where do you think is a good place for us to stand? For
I think
the
you should
ceremony?
have that behind you.
Oh, I think you're right. So maybe like right here?
Yeah, right. Yeah, yeah.
This way?
Yeah.
Talking to, where is he? Yeah, down here. Yeah, with the black hat and white shirt.
All they intended to do was push them off the green, just disperse them. As they start forward, the shot heard around the world. I've been reading it to catch up on my history lately. There's a lot of conjecture about who did what. They still really don't know. A lot of, when we do the reenactment, some of us followed the tavern because when they gave depositions later on, some believe that the shot had come from here, but no one knows. They say it might have been just they fired because they were all aimed at each other. When the British did fire, it started sporadically and picked up speed, and then company commanders gave the command to volley fire. And that's when we'd all come down with our huge muskets and just throw a cloud of lead at them. The result, the battle lasted maybe 7 minutes. The British drove the Minutemen off the green, chasing and shooting out. One was bayoneted, the cousin of Captain Parker. Eight Minutemen were killed, 10 were wounded, one British soldier received a wound just above his knee. British then, an officer came out from a grenadier company and ordered a drummer to sound assembly. British officers were running up and down the line screaming at the men about, I want rounds counted, I want to know who fired that shot. They were allowed to fire a volley in honor of the king, and they marched off to do their job in Congo. That was the shot heard around the world. So, if you want to take a look around, I don't advise it.
Well, we're looking anyway.
Talk to you, just for a minute.
Okay,
And,
all right.
I thank you very much, sir.
Thank you. First of all, welcome to Lexington. There will not be a battle here today.
Good.
I really want to thank all of you for coming out and the respectful way in which you're treating the battle green and the area around here. Obviously, we're in a troubled time right now. We're asking that you cooperate with us. We need to redeploy to another city. So as soon as we can do this, we need to relieve the people who are over there who have worked all night long to bring this whole thing to an end. So we'd appreciate your cooperation in doing that. Yep. Some of the things that we're going to ask that you do is please, already I'm going to ask this, you guys are looking at me like, what are you doing? We need to be in smaller groups. If you want to mill around, that's great. But if you can be in groups of 6 or 7, but any bigger group than that creates issues for us. Again, You're not the issue. It's other outlying problems that we might be facing. So I would really appreciate that if you respected that piece. I can't answer your historic questions. I could, but I'd be BSing you all.
Do you feel you're getting paid enough for today?
No, I don't. So, enjoy yourselves all. Thank you very much.
We want to make sure to send those. Thank you.
Absolutely. And another thing too is they posted about the chief of police, and I want to get everyone together to kind of thank you to him for being so
What we're going to do for those ceremonies, we're going to line up facing this way, so the statue's on your back right there, and the green's on your back, and the film crew will make sure we're lined up right. And we got all our guys gathered together. We're going to say a prayer. We'll do a warrior's prayer, and then I'll say for a moment just a little bit about the solemnity of oaths and our responsibilities. We'll do the oath ceremony, and then we're going to go to West Springfield. The police here have been very accommodating and good to go. So, our fight's with the selectmen, not with the police officers here. That's how we want to keep it. So, I think it's a good outcome for us. All right? And we'll go to West Springfield. You're all invited to go there and we're gonna have a good time there. And we're gonna plan on having a lot of beers into the night. We had a Boston PD officer email us and say, I was planning on being on the green today, but because it's going on in Boston, I'm working overtime, I can't make it. So I told him we would raise a beer to his honor tonight.
Especially when you don't celebrate here, I need you to help
Thank you, Carl.
fighting for liberty costs a lot. Amen.
And I'm not into the Stewart, so I like to but I do have. Well, I
Attack in Boston, false flag attack.
3, 2, 1. Big smile.
Freedom. Fighting for freedom costs a lot, but losing it costs everything. And only the guilty fear the truth. So now's the time to get your cameras out. Now's the time to start comparing notes.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. The selectmen, standard operating procedure for the left, they talked about today. Absurdly, this is the Lexington Green, Lexington Town Selectmen. They talk about how this is the anniversary of Waco and Timothy McVeigh blowing up Oklahoma City. They don't even talk about the fact that it's the anniversary of the first shot of the American Revolution, which they always celebrate here in Lexington. It's really bizarre. As though we're here to celebrate Oklahoma City or Waco. That's why we're here.
It's disturbing.
So, you know, we all know why we're here. And just so you understand the historic background, we came here first in 2009, stood on the green, renewed our oaths. Gray Wolf here was here with us, other veterans. And we were here to honor the men who fell on Lexington Green, the first patriots who watered the tree of liberty for the American Revolution. And everyone since. We're in a long, unbroken chain from them to us of servicemen who have stood up for this country. It's now our watch. That's why we're here. And we were following in the footsteps of the founding generation. In 1798, the Militia Company of Massachusetts gathered on Lexington Green to renew their oaths to the Constitution. They felt it was important enough during the turmoil and the division in the country between the Federalists and the Jeffersonians. They felt it was important enough to renew their commitment to the Constitution. Not to political parties, to the Constitution. And on that green were men who had fought on April 19, 1775, and their sons, who were now in the militia. And they sent a proclamation to President John Adams about what they had done and why. And that is what John Adams sent back a quote, or sent back a reply to them, and that's what we quote on the back of our shirts. Where's the shirt with the back of the quote on the back of it? John Adams.
John Adams shirt.
You got one on.
Milan LaBeigh.
Well, you got one on, Gray Wolf. Show them the back of your shirt. Down at the bottom there, come here, I'll read it to them. When John Adams replied to the Militia Company of Massachusetts in 1798, when they renewed their oaths in Lexington Green, he said, oaths in this country are as yet universally considered as sacred obligations. That which you have taken and so solemnly repeated on that venerable spot is an ample pledge of your sincerity and devotion to your country and its government. President John Adams. The venerable spot he was talking about is Lexington Green. So that is why we're here. We're here to follow in their footsteps. We didn't make some new novel thing up. We're just doing what they did. If they thought it was right, combat veterans from the American Revolution to renew their oaths here, then it's right for us to do so too. And the selectmen of Lexington can stuff it. So I'm glad the police officers here. I'm glad the police officers here remember their oaths and respect our right to peacefully assemble and speak and honor our fallen. That's why we're here. All right, is Mr. Pratt here yet?
Is Larry Pratt
Mr.
here?
Pratt. Good to see you. You prayer for us today? Good to go. Okay, what we're going to do now is first of all, we're going to have Steve Redford, who had the permit for the gathering on the green, welcome you real quickly, and then we're going to go into our oath ceremony. Go ahead, Steve.
Welcome, everyone. I want to thank you guys for still coming out and being brave enough to show up, despite the Board of Selectmen trying to strip us of our civil liberties. I was hoping for something a lot bigger, but the turnout is good enough for me because we're standing against them, despite anything they might attempt with us. I want to let you all know for sure that I am fighting this in court. Been fighting it for a few days now, and I plan on continuing this Monday.
Good for you.
I'm not going to stand down on it.
Yes, sir.
I'm going to go after until my resources are completely run out, and when my resources are run out, I'm going to seek more resources, and I'm going to continue this until the right thing has happened.
We will help you with that.
Thank you. Everyone enjoy this beautiful day. So far the weather's held out. Enjoy the beautiful battle green, even though we're prohibited from walking on it.
But we're on the green right now too. This is
That's
part
right.
of the historic green.
That's right.
Buckman's Tavern is part of the green.
So please stay by for the oath ceremony and for the prayer. And please follow us out to West Springfield for another rally where we won't be infringed upon with a lot more people. Thanks for coming.
Okay, as I said before, we're here to follow the founding generation's footsteps. They stood on this green and renewed their oaths. We're here to do the same. And I want you to understand, those of you who have taken the oath before, you're under an oath obligation still until you die. We ask you to renew your oath today and recommit. Those of you who've never taken an oath before, you're welcome to do so. You don't have to. The American people are not required to take an oath. Only public servants are, because you reserve the right to revolution. If you want to take an oath, you're more than welcome to join us. But I admonish you, do not do so unless you are willing to give your life in the keeping of that oath, just like our combat vets here, like this man right here. You do not take this oath unless you're serious about it. Every man from Lexington Green on to today who served in Iraq and Afghanistan is an unbroken chain of guardians of the Republic who are willing to fight and die for this country. You must be willing to do the exact same thing. It's a solemn oath. It's an obligation between you and God. You were saying, so help me God, because God's going to punish you if you don't keep it.
Stuart, we're going to have a prayer first?
Yes, we are. Larry Pratt, Gunners of America, is going to lead us in a prayer. And then after that, we're going to have Marine Corps Vietnam combat vet Elias here is going to lead the oath ceremony. Go ahead, Larry.
Take your caps off.
Take off your covers, guys.
Let's bow our heads and go before the throne of grace. The Lord God of hosts, stretch forth, we pray, your almighty arm to strengthen and protect the soldiers of our country. Support them in the day of battle and in a time of rest and training. Keep them safe from all evil. Endue them with courage and loyalty, and grant that in all things they may serve without reproach through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
Amen. Simplify.
And without reproach means by honoring their oath. Larry, do you have any comments you want to make real quick?
It is a blessing to be here with patriots who have come to honor the tradition that began here on this green in defense of the liberty of then Englishmen, defending the rights of Englishmen. And we can only be humbled that those rights have been made even clearer by our own history in this country. We are the most privileged of people in the world. Having traveled to many parts of the world, I can tell you that in spite of all of the shortcomings of our country, this is the best place on earth. This is a truly great
Land of the free.
What more can I say? We have been given a heritage that is priceless. And may God grant that we can keep this heritage so that our children and our grandchildren can not only enjoy it, but actually make it even better than what they've been given by us. In Christ's name, I ask. Amen.
As Thomas Paine said, if there is to be trouble, let it be in my day, that my child may have peace.
Amen.
Now, we're going to have Oathkeeper Board of Directors member Elias here, who's also, more importantly, a Vietnam Marine combat vet.
Welcome home.
You in an oath ceremony. Step towards your camera a little bit.
Hello, Lexington Green.
Hello. Hey.
Thank you all for being here. I'm from Montana. It's a long ride. Glad to be here with each of you. Stewart has already expressed the solemn, grave nature of taking an oath before God. We want to mean every word we say. I will be slow, as I already am slow, and we're going to mean this and live it after we swear it.
There. Speak up, please.
I want everyone who wants to do this oath, raise your right hand as well as you can. Be at attention, because this is a very sacred obligation. When I come to the word I, you will fill in your name after the word I. It's the first word up, so this is going to be easy. I do solemnly swear or affirm that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States of America against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, and that I take this obligation freely, without any mental reservation, or purpose of evasion, pledging my life, my fortune, and my sacred honor. So help me God. Thank you, Oath Keepers.
Now we're going to go to West Springfield. We're going to have speeches there, and then we're going to go to some tavern somewhere and raise a glass to all our fallen and our current serving and have a good time. Allegiance real quick. Oh, and Donna can sign this. Yep. All right, face the flag.
Covered.
Covered. Hats off. Hit the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right.
Oh yeah.
All right, let's go to West Springfield. Saddle up, guys. Let's go to West Springfield.
That's the way historically it was. The constable, the sheriff, exempt from militia duty to muster and stuff because they had another function, you know, when there was murders and everything else, they could focus on that. But it was a good compliment. Yeah, God help us.
Was there going to be a speech or something?
Well, I know Garrett's happen to be a member of the Sun.
They have people up on the roof and one in the window there. One in the window had a great
Well, everybody, we're heading to West Springfield, trying to catch that second rally. My swing dance in Cambridge is canceled because the whole town is locked down. Musicians I know that need to play up in New Hampshire can't leave that area. No one can leave their homes because of this manhunt that's underway for the Boston Marathon bombers, one of which is dead and the other one's at large, according to news reports.
Massachusetts Governor Deval Patrick does what no governor in modern U.S. history has ever done. He orders nearly 1 million people to stay home. The greater Boston area shut down. Heavily armed officers in Watertown search for the suspect, house to house. Residents trapped in their homes but anxious to talk and communicate by phone, text, and the internet.
All day long, we just kept looking at each other, my husband and I, saying, is this really happening? And we're watching the TV, and it just felt like we were inside this strange nightmare.
Those inside their homes weren't allowed to leave, and those outside weren't allowed in.
It's super scary. Like, of all the places in Boston, I never thought that they would be right here.
The dramatic scene played out in front of our cameras. Parents grabbing their children and running after spending the night hunkering in their houses and then finding themselves face to face with the muzzle of a SWAT officer's rifle.
It's a little stressful. It was a little stressful seeing these guys pointing big guns and you're holding your daughter in your arms, but they're doing the right thing. They're trying to secure the neighborhood.
Each time the SWAT team would rescue a family at the point of a gun, they would rush into the home in an armored line, guns at the ready in case the suspect was hiding inside. And each time they cleared out a resident, they did it with a force that reflected the uncertainty of not knowing who was a friend and who was a foe.
When he banged on the door, I looked up, I was shocked, and there was a gun, or 2 guns or whatever, pointing down at me, and the guys, and they said, get out, get out. I said, okay. And I wanted to know, do I get my shoes? Just get out, okay, all right.
The pattern was dramatically repeated time and again, house after house. But finally, it became apparent all the families were out of their homes and the suspect was not inside.
It was terrifying.
Chaos in the streets sent people running for cover to their homes. 7's Adam Harding in Watertown now. And Adam, it really has been a terrifying scene over there.
You know, Amanda and Kim, we know that there are anywhere from 3 to 5 different crime scenes here in Watertown, and a lot of these are residential neighborhoods. And you can imagine when these investigators are going house by house, if you weren't already inside by the time they started this search, you haven't been allowed back inside ever since. This was now 14, 15, 16 hours for some of these people. So as we await an update from police here where they're briefing the media, a lot of these homeowners who haven't been able to watch the coverage from their own home because they haven't been inside have actually been turning to us out on the streets as they simply wait to see when they may be able to return back home.
Make a hole, make it wide!
A normally quiet Watertown neighborhood.
It's nice. I don't lock my doors.
Rocked by explosive violence.
There's probably 35 cops on foot, running towards us.
Heavily armored state police, their rifles locked in place, searching house after house, looking for the second suspect in Monday's marathon bombing.
I mean, I hope the guy's not, in my house, but, I hope they catch him.
Hours of searching and still no sign of their suspect, who authorities say landed in this neighborhood after a wild shootout with police that left one officer dead and another badly injured.
I called my mom, and she's actually glad that we're not in that area. She's would be more afraid of us to be in our apartment, with the doors locked, than to be out here where we know we're okay.
Neighbors kept from getting inside their homes for the better part of an entire day.
I'm certainly not happy about it. I wanted to sleep.
After we were here earlier and we saw what was going on, we kind of figured it would be a while.
Law enforcement teams feared the suspect may have littered explosives along the roadways. Those inside their homes weren't allowed to leave, and those outside weren't allowed in.
It's super scary. Of all the places in Boston, I never thought that they would be right here.
And it really has certainly been a nightmare for these homeowners, going on now 16 hours without getting inside. Many of them say, though, despite the sleep, they appreciate all of the work. They understand why they're not allowed back inside. They're doing their best to remain hyper vigilant, though admittedly a lot of them are just cautious and wondering when they may be able to return back to their home. But of course, until an arrest is made, it may be some time. Live in Watertown, Adam Harding, 7 News.
He banged on the door. I looked up. I was shocked, and there was a gun, or 2 guns, or whatever, pointing down at me. And the guys, and they said, "Get out, get out." I said, "Okay." And I wanted to know, do I get my shoes? Just get out, okay, all right.
The pattern was dramatically repeated time and again, house after house.
Well, everybody, we're heading to West Springfield, trying to catch that second rally. My swing dance in Cambridge is canceled because the whole town is locked down. Musicians I know that need to play up in New Hampshire can't leave that area. No one can leave their homes because of this manhunt that's underway for the Boston Marathon bombers, one of which is dead and the other one's at large, according to news reports. Anyway, so my plans change. Off I go to Springfield. Well, here we are. We're at the West Springfield exit. Hey.
It's very interesting to see a member of the press holding a Culpeper flag.
Well, I'm an independent press.
Okay.
But I won't claim that I'm not biased like the rest of them do.
You're just biased in the right way.
I'm biased in my own way.
There you go.
Fiercely unbiased.
Fiercely.
Hey, can you guys hear me all right? Yeah. So, as you know, we mark our liberty basically by July 4th, which is a great holiday. But more than a year before that is really the day that America started, and it started in smoke and courage and with firearms on Lexington Green. That's how our nation was born. And we were working to have a big multi-speaker event like this on Lexington Green. I'm just as happy having it here in West Springfield Green. Quite frankly, Lexington could take a lesson from this town, no doubt about it. So Stephen and I went in after the awful tragedy that happened on Monday. We were there on Tuesday to have a hearing, but it was a foregone conclusion that they were going to pull our permit. And the select woman there was really, that was the most disgusting thing I ever saw. She said, oh yeah, what happened yesterday, of course, you know, it was Patriots Day, and then Friday, which is the real Patriots Day today, and that's the 20th anniversary of Waco. She said that right to us, and then she said also Oklahoma City. So basically, what happened in Boston was the fault of you Patriots, and that's why we're pulling the permit. Now, when Steve Redfern got up to speak, and they did let him speak for a little while, the first thing he did was look at her, and he said, you know, Madam Select Woman, a couple of my friends lost limbs yesterday. You could have heard a pin drop. Yeah, so we were not going to be deterred. I said when I came out of there, I said, come hell or high water, I'm going to be on Lexington Green tomorrow. We didn't have the full event. We didn't have the permit, but we showed up with Stewart Rhodes and Larry Pratt, and we had a prayer, and we had a few short speeches, and we had our media, and we had the oath to the Constitution on that sacred ground at Buckman Tavern, which overlooks the green, and that's where the boys met, and the night before the British came. And so all of the wonderful integrity of the people that showed up anyway, and there were cops on the green earlier, and they said, you can't do anything, you can't do anything. Well, we slowly talked to them, and we slowly won them over, and we did do something. We had a mini event, and it's all to, and also Steve's organization, as soon as we got the permit pulled, Gun Rights Across America stopped supporting our right to speak at Lexington Green. And so Stephen said bye-bye to that, you know, I don't even want to call it a Gun Rights Across America. I'll let Steve explain what they really are, but he's now with Larry Pratt and Gun Owners of America. Steve, you want to tell us a little more?
Hello, everyone. Thanks for coming out today. Nice turnout. As Tom mentioned, I was organizing another rally in Lexington called the Muster on the Battle Green. Put a lot of time and effort into it, and also a lot of money jumping through hoops for the town of Lexington to give me the right to exercise my First Amendment. Despite my disagreements with that, I complied just to make the rally successful. At first, I was given the permit, and there was an outrage in the town of Lexington about it, where newspaper articles from the city were ripping me apart, calling me heartless, that I would consider to compare myself as a patriot from those in 1775 and 1776, and no one saw the correlation between us. Found that a little bit awkward. Second step was the lieutenant detective decided to send out a mass email to all police departments in Massachusetts seeking advice on mass general law on how to deal with us patriots on that day, looking for reasons to arrest us. Well, fortunately, a lot of Oath Keepers are still active duty police, and they sent me that email so I could counteract it and put an end to it right away. Once that was squashed, I found out another organization called Lex Common Sense had formed directly because of my rally. They wanted to oppose me. So be it. I support their First Amendment right. But that caused chaos, and I was also told I would have to pay for their police detail. A big issue with this is that I feel wholeheartedly that my rally was stopped based on content. They didn't want the message of pro-Second Amendment people being spread across Lexington. They claim this was false, but a very good point to point out about this is that I was required to secure a police detail, and I had to pull a permit. For some reason, my counter-protesters were not required to get either of those. Sounds a bit context-based to me.
Sounds like discrimination.
Just a little bit of discrimination right there. Anyways, what I had planned for the muster on the Battle Green was something that was going to be amazing, something that people would not forget for decades. And I can't take full credit for that. I had a lot of help from Stewart Rhodes from the Oath Keepers, getting speakers for the event. Phenomenal participation. Also, Randy Swanson from Rhode Island introduced me to some great people like Tom Moore, the MC here tonight. And we had something amazing set up, and something that was attempted to be taken away from us. After I found out about the permit being revoked, I went and looked for counsel, and I was introduced to Blake Filippi, my attorney who helped me file an emergency injunction and restraining order against the town of Lexington. Unfortunately, it was shot down.
You appealing it?
Doing a little more than that. And I'll leave the details out for the newspapers to report, but I'm telling you now that I'm not being disheartened by this. I will stand my ground. Despite my permit being pulled, I decided it would be best for everyone to practice what I call to be a little bit of civil disobedience. Yeah! We all gathered anyways, and when the police saw our numbers, miraculously they agreed to let us have our little gathering. No permits required.
Yeah, that's what
I'm proud to say that just over 100 people showed up. They stood their ground and they weren't afraid of being arrested. In fact, we're all prepared to be arrested today. But none of us were arrested. We were peaceful as promised. We conducted a no ceremony, and we came down to this rally. And I want to thank everybody that went to Lexington and then took the hike all the way out here to support this rally as well. I also have to thank Brian Doe for making some arrangements to have me speak and to have a couple of my speakers come in as well. Another speaker of mine from the rally, Bettina, is here. You'll be hearing from her shortly. And thanks again for the support. And I would like for everyone here to follow Gun Rights Across America and figure out what they're all about. I'm not here to bash them, but I think we need to be very careful about what organizations we decide to back and stand by, especially ones that want to compromise and accept the Toomey Mansion bill. Not very good. Once again, thanks everyone for coming. Thanks for the support, and I guarantee you'll be hearing a lot more from me, and I will get us back on that battle green.
Yeah.
Stephen Redfern. So glad you can make it out here from Lexington. Thank you for all that you do.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is John Franceschi. I'm with the Rhode Island Oath Keepers. I got a couple of short speeches to share with you today. The first one here, this is one I wrote. It's kind of a gentle rant, I'll say, that I wrote in response to a lot of the comments that I saw in the Lexington Patch, which is the local Lexington paper, after they began coming after us and calling us all kinds of names. And this is really not directed mostly at this crowd, but if there's anybody out there in this crowd that does stand against us, listen up, because this is for you. Today I would like to address any of you who came here today to stand against us. I wish to say first, welcome. Let's have a chat, shall we? It is far too common among some crowds to claim the high ground of diversity and tolerance, and then, at the drop of a hat, shout down, demean, and silence those who do not hold unbendingly to their perceived reality. Any and all dissenting opinions and even facts do not comport with their ways of thinking, are rejected out of hand and dismissed without any further intellectual debate or critical thought. Well, some of us are tolerant and enjoy diverse opinions, and we don't only say these things, we actually mean them. So to those of you who would like to engage in a serious civil debate without name-calling, insults, and hyperbole, we invite you to come up and ask us questions and give us your thoughts on the topics we disagree on. Over the last few days, as we mourn the loss of yet more innocent lives and the numerous tragic life-altering injuries and emotional traumas from the recent attack in Boston, I have heard remarked too many times to count that we will get through this because we are a strong people, or that the terrorists have not frightened us and they will not change the way we live our lives. Well, judging by the security state that we live in, they have already won. They have altered our former ways, and not for the better. I have heard many remark on how those acts committed upon our friends and neighbors and families are cowardice, and this is true. However, there is another type of cowardice, even more dangerous, and that is the shrinking spirit of liberty in exchange for security. How many of our fellow citizens do we see running into the arms of an ever-expanding government nanny state to beg for protection? How many do we see cowering in fear from their own neighbors and family members who happen to believe that small government and the Constitution are a good thing? How many are afraid to reach forth and grab the world by the balls and give a good squeeze, afraid it will squeeze back? Far too many think they have no chance to live a good and decent life without the nanny state of government to provide them every creature comfort and need in life. There are those amongst us who wish to depend on the government to come rushing in on some elusive white stallion and save them from the perp who mugs them or kicks in their door at 2 a.m. instead of taking responsibility for their very safety and that of their loved ones.
The white unicorn.
Remember that the great American icon, John Wayne, the Duke, well, he left us some good advice. He once said, "Courage is being scared to death and saddling up anyway." I think more Americans could benefit from those words today. Where are you, America? Where did you go? What terrible fate has befallen you when nearly half the country has forgotten their own history and lost their purpose? This nation cannot long survive at the direction of such cowardice and nonsensical thinking. We are supposed to be a gritty, yet enlightened working-class people with bold ideas, lofty goals, yet humble disposition. Never afraid of hard work and always ready to lend a hand and help the downtrodden aspire to a place where they can achieve their life's greatest dreams. It's not too late. There are millions of your fellow countrymen standing at the ready to help you and point you back to the road of reason and truth and away from the road to serfdom. But, as it is in the true American tradition, the heavy lifting will be up to you. You will have to learn how to thrive as an American in a free land. You will sink or swim, but you will have the peace knowing that you achieved to your place in life based upon your own merits, and that is a gift in and of itself. I implore you, look at our history. Look at both the good and the bad. Learn from the past, both what works and what doesn't, and why. Learn the truth about natural law and the true intent of our founders and our Constitution and our beloved Declaration of Independence. Believe in yourselves and in your children. For God's sakes, believe in your children. Trust in your neighbor and in your own instincts. You know something is terribly wrong in this nation today, You feel it in your gut. But do you believe that it is simply a political problem, or a problem with political parties with a mere political solution? Do you really believe it can all be fixed by passing even more laws, adding to the hundreds of thousands of laws already on the books? Our problems are much deeper than that. But the solutions are really quite simple, as so often is the case. Smaller, more local government, answerable to the people, limited and enumerated powers of the federal state as provided for by our Constitution, and of course, personal responsibility. The current administrative state is one full of arrogance and incompetence. It makes us serfs under the rule of Ivy League men who condescend occasionally to imbue us with their perceived wit and charm, and perhaps pretend to listen to our problems while ignoring the real cause and even making them worse. They constantly repeat the lie that we need them, that we can't survive without them and their gigantic brains and hearts. In reality, they have no regard for you. Do not be deceived, for it will prove a snare to your feet. They tell us to just give them more and more power to control and decide for us how we are to live, what we are to drive, how much soda we can drink, how warm or cool to keep our homes, how or even if we are able to protect our very life breath. It never seems to end. It gets worse every year, and it does not have to be this way. Cast off these arrogant and condescending aristocrats who steal away your wealth and your very lives with each passing day to feather their nests by your labor. This is not a new phenomenon. People have oft been the cause of their own downfall. Aesop set to warn us about this very danger in the mid-6th century BC in one of his now famous fables, one entitled The Eagle and the Arrow, which reads as follows. An eagle sat on a lofty rock, watching the movements of a hare whom he sought to make his prey. An archer who saw the eagle from a place of concealment took an accurate aim and wounded him mortally. The eagle gave one look at the arrow that had entered his heart and saw in that single glance that its feathers had been furnished by himself. It is a double grief to me, he exclaimed, that I should perish by an arrow feathered by my own wings. Are you the eagle, or are you the archer? The choice is yours, my fellow countrymen, but choose you must. And now, just one more short thing. I've only got a couple more minutes, so I'm going to get right to it. The Americans who gave their lives not too far from here, 238 years ago today, did so defending their lives, family, and property from those in their own government who sought to destroy those very things in order to maintain and grow government power and control over them. They were defending something else too. They were defending their natural-born rights as human beings. In doing so, they were laying the foundations of the protections of rule of law to protect millions yet unborn. In fact, they were defending you and yours. How did they do this, and under what authority? The natural right of man to defend himself in the face of imminent danger is irrevocable without his consent. James Wilson, a signer of the Declaration, a member of the Constitutional Convention, and an early Supreme Court justice, said, "The great natural law of self-preservation cannot be repealed, superseded, or suspended by any human institution." The men who gathered there in Lexington on the morning of April 19th, 1775, defended these things by way of two distinct means. First, they were already part of the local militia. Thus, they had been previously trained and prepared for just such an event as they now faced. They were able to transform themselves from individuals acting alone into a group acting in concert for the common defense. Secondly, they were armed with the same type of firearms as the ones used by the regular Army or Select Corps. Therefore, parity was achieved between the regulars and the local militia. Without this vital militia structure, the people would not have been able to drive the Select Corps back to Boston and go on to win our freedom and build the greatest example of self-government the world has ever seen. It is for these reasons that the Second Amendment exists and is still vital today. Both the second clause, maintaining an individual's right, and the first clause, maintaining the right of the local communities to assemble for the common defense. It is only at our peril that we ignore this critical truth. Too many people to count have sworn a sacred oath to uphold these principles and rights, and many having given the last great measure of devotion, life itself, in defense of our Constitution. We here today undertake no less a noble and solemn endeavor. May we ever uphold our sacred honor and maintain our oaths to the Constitution and its first principles. Thank you. I turn it over now to my good friend, Dan McGonigal.
John Franceschi, ladies and gentlemen.
The founders knew how to answer such tyranny. When Captain John Parker, one of the 3% of American colonists who actively took the field against the king during the Revolution, mustered his militia company on Lexington Green, it was in a demonstration of armed civil disobedience. He might have retreated at the British approach, but he didn't. He might have ordered his men to lay down their arms, but he didn't. His defiance was silently but plainly stated. A veteran of the French and Indian Wars, he didn't want a war. He knew what a war was. But he knew that some things are worse than war. The silent defiance of Captain Parker, the British could not tolerate. And someone fired a shot. But even before the shot heard round the world, the colonists understood their weaknesses and their military needs, and they did something about it. They smuggled. They smuggled Dutch gunpowder and French flints. They smuggled tents and uniform cloth and artillery and ammunition. Boston was the high headquarters of anti-royal smuggling, and John Hancock was its prime minister. Connecticut was a small empire built on patriotic smuggling. The colonists knew what to do, and they did it, regardless of the king's ministers and the king's soldiery. They defied the king. They resisted his edicts. They evaded his laws, and they smuggled. Lord above, did they smuggle. Now we find ourselves in a similar situation. The new King Barack and his minions have determined to disarm us, and we must determine to resist them. No one wants a new civil war, except apparently the anti-constitutional tyrants who pass these laws and their media toadies who cheer them on. But a civil war is what's staring us in the face. To think otherwise is to whistle past the graveyard of our own history. We must, if we wish to avoid armed conflict, get across this message to the collectivists who have declared their appetites for our liberty, our property, and our lives. When democracy turns to tyranny, the armed citizen still gets to vote. Just like King George, such people will not care nor modify their behavior by what you say, no matter how loudly or in what numbers you say it. They will only pay attention to what you do. So defy them, resist these laws, evade them, smuggle in what they command you not to have. Only by our acts will they be impressed. Then if they mean to have a civil war, they will at least have been informed of the unintended consequences of their tyrannical actions. Again, I say, defy, resist, evade, smuggle, if you wish to stay free, and to pass down that freedom to your children's children. You can do no less than to become the lawbreakers that they have unconstitutionally made of you. Accept that fact, embrace it, and resolve to be the very best, most successful lawbreakers you can be, and you will stay free. Thank you.
All right, so it is going to be my honor to introduce an individual here in a minute, but what I wanted to do before I did that is just let you guys know something. Now, I'm an 8-year active duty Army vet, but what's more important is I'm an oath keeper. Yes. Because currently I'm a current law enforcement officer, and I'm here to tell you in public I will never disarm my fellow American citizens. I will never disarm my fellow American citizens. And I know there's many fellow law enforcement officers, as well as military personnel, that are in this same boat that I am, and that have made that same oath. And that's why we're oath keepers. And so now it's my honor to introduce an individual who, incredible gentleman, graduate of Yale Law, constitutional lawyer, paratrooper veteran, and president and founder of the National Oath Keepers Association, Stewart Rhodes.
You know, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank Brian for what he's done here, and also to announce that the BOD of Oath Keepers has just elected him to be your chapter president for Massachusetts officially. He's already been doing the job anyway, so now it's official. Today is the anniversary, not of Oklahoma City. It certainly is that. That's not why we're here. We're not here to celebrate that or Waco, as the town council of Lexington seems to think. We're here to celebrate our heritage and the shot fired around the world in 1775 when the farmers, the embattled farmers, stood on Lexington Green and Concord Bridge and handed the redcoats their ass. That's why we're here. And as Mike Vanderbilt said a little while ago, Captain Parker and his men stood on that green with the resolve and the smarts to make them come to them. His orders to his men were to stand your ground, not fire, let's fire it upon. But if they mean to have a war, let it begin here, and there it did. You need to understand, though, that they had suffered through a long train of abuses, multiple violations of their natural rights and their rights as Englishmen, denial of jury trial, warrantless searches, confiscation of property and people, the application of military law to them, martial law, and the laws of war applied to them. It's not just gun grabbing that day. They weren't just after the powder and the cannon. They were also after people. They were coming for John Hancock and Sam Adams. And were they going to get a jury trial? No, they would have rotted in
in the hull of a brick ship in Boston Harbor, or they were taken across the seas, be tried in England for pretend offenses, not in front of a jury of their peers, but in a hostile jury of Englishmen packed by the king, the king's cronies. That's why they fought. It wasn't just about guns. The guns was the final straw that broke the camel's back, but they had suffered a long train of abuses. Sound familiar? Yeah. We are suffering today almost the exact same train of abuses. What is the NDAA except for a blazing claim that they can deny you jury trial and apply the laws of war against you? It's even worse than what King George claimed the power to do. As far as I know, King George, until the fighting started, did not claim the power to order colonists murdered. But your president now claims the authority to use drone strikes or anything else against you. What can be done to the enemy under the laws of war? You can kill them on sight. If you capture them, you can hold them for the duration of the conflict, or you can try them by military tribunal. That is what they claim the power to do to you right now. It's no different than what was done to the Iraqis or the Afghans. They are asserting the power to treat you, the American people, exactly the same as an occupied, conquered enemy nation. What is that? It's treason. They are declaring war against you and waging war against you. One of the charges against the king, the final one listed, is he has declared us outside of his protection and is waging war against us. And he has absolved his right to rule. This government is doing much the same. They're declaring us outside of the protection of the Bill of Rights, outside the protection of the body of the Constitution itself, like Article 3, which mandates jury trial for all crimes. And they are waging war against us. There is no difference. So why have we not taken up arms yet? Sometimes I hear patriots say, what are you guys waiting for? When are we going to take our country back and put these treasonous traitors on trial? And my answer to them, of course they say, well, this just shows that Americans are soft and too weak and they will never stand up. No. Do you believe that? No! The British officers thought the same thing. They thought that no American colonist would ever dare fire on the king's troops. One of them bragged that he could take a battalion of grenadiers and travel up and down the coast of America, gelding all the males, half by coercion and half by coaxing. They thought they would never fire because they had seen that they had suffered a long train of abuses and had not fought back. Were they right? No! They learned April 19, 1775 how mistaken they were when they were ambushed at close range, not just by the militia, but also by individual veterans, like Samuel Whitmore, 80 years old, killing his field. He sees a reinforcement column coming up the road to reinforce what's going on in Lexington and Concord. He knows what's going on. He decides he's had enough. And he ambushed that column at close range. He was too old to run and gun with the young guys, so he made sure his shots counted. 2 pistols in his belt, a musket and a sword. Fired 3 shots, dropped 3 of them in their tracks, then drew his sword and fought sword against bayonet. Shot in the face, bayoneted 18 times, and left for dead. But he survived. When his family came out to get his body, he was still alive, and he was trying to reload his musket for 1 more shot. That is what a veteran does when the time comes. But I'll bet you those British officers never would have dreamed a veteran of the French Indian War, who's now a farmer, would dare to do such a thing. He showed them the error in their presumption of invincibility. That's what a veteran does when the chips are down. That day also there were courage serving. What were the militia, if nothing but the military power of the American people at the time? And you had military officers and their men stepping up that day, like Isaac Davis, militia captain in Concord. He had a premonition that he would not survive if it came to a fight that day. And no matter what, despite that premonition of his own death, he went out and deployed. And he was asked if any of his men were afraid to go. And he said, not a man among us are afraid to go. And they marched down to Concord, they marched down to the bridge, and that is where they turned the tide against the Redcoats. And he did fall that day. He was right. He left behind a wife and 5 kids. So there you got a current serving doing the right thing. Despite having 5 children and a wife to take care of, he still stepped up. And there you got an old man, a dangerous old man, an old veteran doing the right thing. They fulfilled their obligations. None of you have any excuse to do otherwise yourselves. All you old men out there, I don't care how busted up you are, I don't care how old you are, I don't care what your problem is. As long as your heart beats, as long as you draw breath, you have a duty to stand, like Samuel Whitmore did. When does your oath expire? When you do. As long as you're on this side of the grass, you are duty bound. All of you young guys, I've got 5 children myself. All of us who have families, we are still on the hook. None of you has any excuse to duck your duty. When you swore your right hand, how many here swore an oath to defend the Constitution? Yeah! That's when you made your choice. From that moment on, you're duty bound. You cannot opt out. As Mike said, in the current onslaught against our Second Amendment protected rights, where do our rights come from? From God. Natural right to self-defense is the first law of nature. But in this current onslaught, our obligation and our duty is to declare to the oath breakers and the traitors that we will not disarm, we will not comply, and we will resist. That is the only reply worthy of a free people. And anybody who tells you that you must compromise your rights is a quisling and a useful idiot. And I'm talking about Alan Gottlieb in particular, who wanted us to go along with this crappy so-called compromise for a national database. Where in the Constitution is Congress given the authority to register American gun owners or do background checks on you before you can exercise a natural right? Where's the power in the Constitution? Nowhere. Before you even had a Second Amendment, the Constitution granted no such power. And under the Second Amendment, it made a declaratory statement that no infringement of our right to bear arms shall be done. Remember, the only point of the Bill of Rights is to clarify the restrictions on the government and the limited nature of its power. Right. As Mike said, you got to embrace your place in history. As you guys in the military know the term embrace the suck. You need to understand where we are. You are the modern American revolutionaries. You are the modern American founding fathers. But unlike them, all you have to do is preserve what was already given to you by the blood of other patriots. It's so much easier for you. All you have to do is preserve what they gave you. You don't have to found a new country. You just got to restore the one you were given. But don't do it for yourselves. You do it for your children. As Thomas Paine said, if there is to be trouble, let it be in my days, so my children may have peace. But what do we do? How do we do this? With Oath Keepers, one of our strategies is to reach out to the current serving. Bloomberg, Cuomo, Barack Obama, and Eric Holder, and all the rest of them cannot do it without the guys with the guns. Yes! If the military and the police simply honor their oaths and refuse to be used as tools of oppression against you, the oath-breaking traitors, no matter how bloodthirsty they are powerless. That's right. Cuomo and Holder, Barack Obama, Peter King, or John McCain are not going to put on body armor and strap up an M4 and kick in your door. They're cowards. I'd love to see them do it, but they won't do it.
No, they want to send other men just like you to do it. They want to send warriors to go and kill the warriors because they're not warriors. They're pencil-necked, stuffed shirts. They will never do it themselves. But they're counting on the police and military following their commands. They think that once they gain the power through elections, that all the toys belong to them, including the military and police. Now, are they right? No! No, we have seen sheriffs across the country stand up. We've seen police chiefs stand up. Individual officers have stood up. Today, this morning, we got an email from a Boston PD police officer that said, I was going to be there on the green with you guys today, but because of what's going on, I'm working overtime, but I want to let you know I'm there in spirit, and I wish I was there. And I told him that we will raise a glass to his honor tonight when we have a beer after the rally. And there are officers across this country just like that. There are good police officers across the country who are waking up in droves because of the assault on the right to bear arms. This is a gift. You should thank Barack Obama. He is not just the greatest gun salesman in history. He is not just the greatest ammunition salesman in history, but ironically, he is turning out to be the greatest community organizer in history. Because he is helping to organize neighborhood watches, militias, posses, and backing up the sheriff, and patriot groups all across this country. Unintended consequences are biting him in the ass. See it as a gift. Embrace it. Use this opportunity to wake up your fellow gun owners, your fellow veterans, and your fellow Americans. Even if you've never sworn an oath to support and defend the Constitution, even if you've never served as military, police, or first responders, you're still Americans. You still have a duty and responsibility to preserve the liberty given to you by the blood of patriots. You still have a duty to hand that down to your posterity. At the close of this, I'm going to have my good friend Elias, who's a U.S. Marine, Vietnam combat vet, come up and do an oath ceremony. And I want to invite all of you, whether you're prior service or not, if you want to swear an oath, support and defend the Constitution, we're going to invite you to do so here today. Before I do that, I want to recognize we have lost, sadly, just in the 4 years of Oath Keepers, we have lost some outstanding patriots. One of them was Eddie Gilbert, was our active duty Cleveland police officer who served our first chapter president in Ohio. A very stand-up man. Whenever I needed him, he was there. I got a death threat once for the rally in D.C. He showed up to watch my back, and he just passed away from pancreatic cancer. So I want to have today be an honor for him. Also, this last year, I lost my right arm. My vice president for the Eastern U.S. was Major Rex McTeer, retired U.S. Special Forces. And Rex was an outstanding patriot. Out of the blue, he emailed us and said, I'm tracking with what you're saying, I believe in it, and I'm here to help. What can I do? And he flew out to our first conference in Las Vegas, and from that moment on, he was on my board, he was my right arm. And sadly, he died of a sudden heart attack this last year. I'm going to make sure that we add in our site dedication, we'll add Eddie Gilbert and Rex to that site dedication. And Rex's widow is right here in front. Karen McTeer is here. She knew that Rex would want to be here today. She knew that he'd want to be on Lexington Green. So she made the trip all the way up here from South Carolina. Her and her friend drove up. And we just want to know, we want her to know that we love her very much. She's like a family to us. And I know Rex is here in spirit. Our website is also dedicated, our mission is dedicated to my father-in-law, John Adams. At the age of 15, when the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor, he lied about his age and joined the Marine Corps. His enlistment date was December the 10th, 1941, 3 days after Pearl Harbor. That is what it means to step up. He didn't look to the left or the right to see who else was going to do it. He stepped up. at 15 years of age, and he fought all the way across the Pacific, including at Iwo Jima. That's what an Oath Keeper does. That's what an American does. And that is what's possible now today. The Japanese and the Nazis also thought we would not fight. They thought Americans were too soft, that they would never dare, they were too decadent and too decayed as a people to fight hard. They were proven wrong. Young Americans rose up out of the farms and the small towns and the cities of this nation and handed them their asses too. We have done that. We have done that throughout our history. All of our enemies underestimate us. The current domestic enemies underestimate us as well. Got it. Recently, I took a World War II veteran on an honor flight back to D.C. Warren Bodecker, might have read about him on our website. U.S. Army Airborne, 3 combat jumps into the Philippines, one of which where he helped to rescue an entire prison camp full of civilians who the Japanese were going to kill, including American citizens, but also men, women, and children from all over the world. And they parachuted in behind enemy lines and rescued all of them, saved them all. So I was honored to be his escort on an honor flight back to D.C. It was such a bittersweet experience. He's standing at the World War II Memorial with tears coming down his eyes, and you know what he told me? He said, for all that we went through to see what's happening in our country now, that's why he was crying. He said, we dropped the ball. We came back, we defeated the Nazis, defeated the Japanese, we came back home, and we're busy raising our families, providing for them, and we were not paying enough attention to the domestic enemies of the Constitution. So now, it is our duty, it is our watch, on behalf of all Americans, to stand up for what they fought for, to make sure their sacrifice, from Lexington Green all the way through the Civil War on both sides, all the way through World War I, World War II, the sands of Iwo Jima, the beach at Normandy, Vietnam, Iraq, Afghanistan, all the blood spilled. You have to make sure it's not in vain. If you do not, they will curse you, and your children will curse you, and then you'll be right to be condemned and cursed. You must stand up now and preserve your birthright of liberty and hand it on to your children. It's your watch. You are like the first wave at Normandy Beach. Do you think those guys at the first wave tried to back out and go hide at the bottom of the ship? Or do they go over the side, climb down the ropes, and get in the boats? What'd they do? They went ashore. The 101st Airborne. You've seen the photo of them talking to Eisenhower before they left. I'll bet you most of those guys that photograph did not come back. My grandfather fought at the Battle of the Bulge. My other grandfather did not return from World War II. He was a ball turret belly gunner on a B-17. Did not make it home. In my family, we have a legacy of serving in the military, like many of you do too. I understand my place in history. You got to make sure you understand yours. It's our watch. It's our turn on the green. It's our turn in the front ranks. Let's go. And the other is the Bill of Rights. Time to fight. So now I'm going to bring up Elias and do an oath ceremony. And I want to remind you that an oath is a sacred obligation to each other, to yourself, and to God, that you will keep your word. Do not take it unless you are serious. Don't water it down. You had better have the same conviction of Captain Parker and his men, the same conviction of Rex, the same conviction of Eddie Gilbert, the same conviction of Warren Bodecker, or my father-in-law. All those men that fought and died have the same conviction they have. You keep your oath, or don't take it. If you're not going to take the oath for that kind of conviction, get off this green. All right, here's a lot.
Oh, yes, sir!
I ain't gonna follow that without something that's even more powerful. You've been built up about the oath. Now, we're gonna give you a chance to renew your oath or take it for the first time. And I want to say, as I remove my hat, this is, as President John Adams said, a sacred obligation. It is meant to be lived once your breath bears the words, to God in His heaven. This is serious stuff. I am so pleased and honored to be in Massachusetts today. I wanted to thank the police force at Lexington. When the police were asked to go to Watertown to chase that scum, they knew Oath Keepers was going to be there, and the police themselves stayed and made sure we could do this ceremony at Lexington Green today. My salute to the Lexington police. My thanks to all the peace officers who are running security for this event here. And my thanks to every Oath Keeper out here in the crowd wearing a shirt in our colors. And my thanks to each individual for being here today to share this moment. I'm going to read this brief oath in short sections. I'm going to ask you to stand as tall as you can, raise your right hand, and I'm going to start the oath by saying the word I. When I say I, each of you will put your name as the next words to come out of your mouth. I say this. Do solemnly swear or affirm. That I will support and defend. The Constitution of the United States of America. Against all enemies, foreign and domestic. That I will bear true faith and allegiance to same. And that I take this obligation freely. Without any mental reservation. Or purpose of evasion. Pledging my life. My fortune. And my sacred honor. So help me God. Welcome, Oath Keepers.
It's great to hear everyone speaking that in unison. Up next, we have Danny Mason from Gray State.
I'd just like to give it one more time for Stewart Rhodes. Yeah! Thank you for your time. My name's Danny Mason. I'm one of the co-creators and lead actors of Gray State. How many out there have actually seen the concept trailer of Gray State? Raise your hand for me. Yo! Thank you for supporting us. If you haven't, we shot a concept trailer about 2 years ago. We're trying to secure funds for the actual feature film. The story is, briefly, takes place in the near future. Martial law has taken over. The United States has collapsed. My character, ex-Special Forces that comes in to help rally the militia, to push out the federal agents, and also fight against foreign army. That's as much as I can give you right now. But the entire Gray State crew is here, so before I go on, if you have any questions or anything, you can find us. Director David Crowley and writer, there's a gentleman right there raising his hand. Also Mitch Heil, right here. So, let's give it up to them really quick. We also have a couple DVDs of the concept trailer. We have cards and t-shirts. Now, I didn't really have anything prepared coming down here. We planned on coming down here about a couple weeks ago to help out with Oath Keepers, but then the tragedy in Boston took place. We felt compelled to go there and see what was actually happening because of the story that we're writing and also trying to reach the masses with. What I saw I wasn't expecting. I've never been to the East Coast and never been to Boston. The first time actually seeing what we talked about, what we dreamed, we're seeing face to face. We're able to walk down to Old South meeting area where people like us were doing exactly the same thing over 200 years ago. And we're still being condemned for it now, which is ridiculous. In fact, it's ludicrous. I remember sitting there in awe, knowing that our forefathers actually fought for our liberty and for our freedom. And now that liberty and freedom is being challenged and also in fear of being taken away. Then we went down to where the Boston Massacre actually taken place, where the British fired upon colonists because they stood up for the first time like we're doing right now. But the most interesting moment is when we went down to the Boston Common. And the first time I saw the company of National Guard there, policing. Now they say they weren't, but they were, and they knew it. They couldn't address the question, they skipped around it. And again, the horrible reality was seeing everyday people like you and I clapping, applauding for this protection, quote unquote. Nothing against them, I completely support what they're doing. I do not support the ignorance and the fact that so many people choose, and I do mean choose, to stick their heads in the sand. People like us who are awake, we don't have that option. We don't have a choice. It is our duty to awaken them. There were a few who were wondering and pondering about it too, who came up and talked to us. We informed them. But do not fret, I do have hope for us. If I didn't, and I was speaking, and one gentleman over there shared the same words, we wouldn't be here. Because we have truth, we have passion, we have love for the Constitution. It is not a privilege, it's a goddamn right. There's a big difference and people get that confused. Thus being reminded of that again when I was down there. We must unite. We must join together and not lose hope. Because if we don't, we need to stand or we will kneel forever. Thank you very much.
Yeah, give another hand to Danny Mason. That guy's incredible. I tell you right now, I've been showing the Gray State is incredible. I've been showing it to all my guys at work, and I can't wait for the thing to come out. It's like, you know, I'm dying. I can't wait.
So what are the constitutional laws of this nation? What are the highest laws of the land with which we are required to comply? Well, the U.S. Supreme Court told us in Heller. The court made clear that we have a right to own firearms that are in common usage. The U.S. Supreme Court told us in McDonald. They've made it very clear that the state governments may not violate that right. So friends, I call on you to fight in the courts, in the voting booths, and on the ground, in the hearts and minds, as Mr. Lott said, by making persuasive arguments in the hearts and minds of the people. But today is our day to decide our part in history. The time for discussion, it's never over, but we've done that. We made Mr. Lott's arguments. We made them in the thousands to the legislature, and they didn't want to hear. They didn't want to learn. They didn't want to know. The bill was already drafted, and it was passed without anyone reading it. The time for discussion has passed. The time for arguments and persuasion has passed. The time to nullify this law bravely and legally. It is legal to nullify an unconstitutional law. We are proud of our ancestors who hid slaves and violated laws to do what was right in this country. We are proud of our founding fathers who did the same. Civil disobedience is our God-given right. It means nonviolence, but it is our God-given right as a free people. Now, no red-blooded American ever waited for others to hand him his rights. So study your history, my friends. It's time to take, I said, take our freedom back. Thank you.
My name is Mike Vanderboot, and I'm a smuggler. I'm from the great free state of Alabama. And I'm also a 3%er. If you need to pigeonhole my politics, I'm a Christian libertarian. I believe in free men, free markets, the rule of law under the Founders' Republic, and that the Constitution extends to everyone regardless of race, creed, color, or religion. I most especially believe in the right of the people to keep and bear arms as the ultimate guarantor of liberty in this country. Now, I have also been called a seditionist by current members of the administration. If faithfully fulfilling my oath to the Founders' Republic and unrelenting hostility to those who would undermine and overthrow it makes me a seditionist, then I cheerfully plead guilty. The 3% movement that I founded has been denounced by that paragon of moral virtue, Bill Clinton, and I am a perennial honorable mention in the Southern Poverty Law Center's list of dangerous folks. I have even been the subject of an 18.5-minute rant by Rachel Madcow on MSNBC, and the current Attorney General of the United States knows and despises me by name because of the Fast and Furious scandal that my friend David Codry and I broke on the internet back in December 2010. Eric Holder would not be surprised to learn that the feeling is mutual. Now, the Coalition to Stop Gun Violence calls me an insurrectionist because I don't believe, as they do, in a government monopoly of violence, but rather in a literal interpretation of the Second Amendment as a bulwark against tyranny. Well, as my friend Kurt Hoffman says, it is better to be despised by the despicable than admired by the admirable. And I suppose my remarks today here reinforce my enemies' opinions of me, but I think I can bear the burden. Yesterday was the anniversary of the battles of Lexington and Concord in 1775, but also of the liquidation of the Warsaw Ghetto in 1943. And that of the Branch Davidians in Waco 50 years later to the day. Two examples of what happens when governments exercise a monopoly of violence. It is proper then to contemplate the lessons of that date in history, April 19th, then, now, and in the near future. What I say now, I say with reluctance, with sadness and not a little bit of dread, but say it I must. For silence in the face of tyranny implies consent, and I do not consent. Neither do I believe that you consent, for you wouldn't be here today if you did. But what I'm about to say is not easy to say, nor is it easy to hear, and many of you will not like it. Sorry, I'm not very good at this. An unconstitutional law is void. It has no effect, so says American jurisprudence, the standard legal text. And that's been upheld by centuries of American law. An unconstitutional law is void. Now that is certainly true. The tricky part is, how do we make that point when the local, state, and federal executive and legislative branches, as well as the courts, are in the hands of the domestic enemies of the Constitution? Everyone who is currently trying to take away your right to arms starts out by saying, I support the Second Amendment. Let me tell you a home truth that we know down in Alabama. Barack Obama supports the Second Amendment just about as much as Adolf Hitler appreciated Jewish culture or Joseph Stalin believed in individual liberty. Believe what politicians do, not what they say. Because the lie is the attendant of every evil. So what shall we do about this current spate of tyranny that's breaking out all over, including, I'm sad to say, your great state? Now, the facsimile of a semi-automatic pistol that some of you hold in your hands was smuggled into your state from the South. It was manufactured in Georgia, transshipped to Alabama, and it came across your state line in the trunk of a car. Now, the fact that the authorities of your state have not yet banned sponge guns, although I understand they recently tried, is immaterial. It could have easily been a whole trunk of real pistols. Indeed, before this year, no one thought that other firearms and related items would ever be banned. But they were. They have been. No one thought that the authorities of your state would pass laws making criminals out of the previously law-abiding. But they did. If they catch you violating their unconstitutional laws, they will, when they please, send armed men to work their will upon you. And people, innocent of any crime save the one these tyrants created, will die resisting them. And yet, despite the cost, these unconstitutional laws must be resisted. For if not now, when? And if not us, who? This is no longer a slippery slope leading to firearm registration and eventual confiscation. It is a precipice that some states, including yours, have already plunged over, and that the federal government threatens to follow. Arrests are happening now in New York. When, if not now, shall we resist? Will we allow ourselves to be shoved back once again from the free exercise of our God-given, natural, and inalienable rights? Shoved back from the traditional exercise of our liberties once more? How long has this been going on? Yet all we've done is mutter and complain, but we've backed up. This is how we got to this place. We never shoved back when we could, and do so without violence. And so now we are here. Where does it stop? When we are all disarmed slaves? The founders knew how to answer such tyranny. When Captain John Parker, one of the 3% of American colonists who actively took the field against the king during the Revolution, mustered his Minutemen Company on Lexington Green, it was in a demonstration of armed civil disobedience. He might have retreated at the British approach. Indeed, initially he had planned to do that, but he didn't. He might have ordered his men to lay down their arms, but he didn't. His defiance was silently but plainly stated. A veteran of the French and Indian Wars, he did not want a war. He knew intimately the horrors of war. But he also knew that some things are worse than war. The British could not tolerate his silent defiance, and someone fired a shot. But even before the shot heard around the world, the colonists understood their weaknesses
and their military needs, and they did something about it. They smuggled. They smuggled Dutch gunpowder. They smuggled French flints. They smuggled tents and uniform cloth and artillery and ammunition. Boston was the high headquarters of anti-British smuggling, and John Hancock was its prime minister. Connecticut was a small empire built on patriot smuggling. The colonists knew what to do, and they did it, regardless of risk, regardless of all the king's ministers and the king's soldiery. They did what was required. They defied the king. They resisted his edicts. They evaded his laws, and they smuggled. Lord above, did they smuggle. And now we find ourselves in a similar situation. The new King Barak and his minions have determined to disarm us, and we must determine to resist them. No one wants a new civil war, except apparently the anti-constitutional tyrants who pass these laws and their media toadies who cheer them on. But one is staring us in the face. Let me repeat that. A civil war is staring us in the face. To think otherwise is to whistle past the graveyard of our own history. We must, if we wish to avoid armed conflict, get across this message to the collectivists who have declared their appetites for our liberty, our property, and our lives. When democracy turns to tyranny, the armed citizenry still gets to vote. Now, just like King George, such people will not care nor modify their behavior by what you say, no matter how loudly or in what numbers you say it. They will only pay attention to what you do. So defy them. Resist these laws. Evade them. Smuggle in what they command you not to have. Only by our acts will they be impressed. Then, if they mean to have a civil war, they will at least have been informed of the unintended consequences of their tyrannical actions. Again, I say, defy, resist, evade, smuggle. If you wish to stay free and to pass down that freedom to your children's children, you can do no less than become the lawbreakers that they have unconstitutionally made of you. Accept that fact, embrace it, and resolve to be the very best and most successful lawbreakers you can be. Now, one last thing before I go, sort of a personal note. On Thursday, I smuggled a half dozen 30-round AR-15 magazines into your state in deliberate disobedience of the state diktat. So to Martin Looney, Mike Williams, Larry Cafaro, and John McKinney, I'd like to say this. I just committed a Class D felony. You tyrannical morons. Prove it. And catch me if you can. And I'll tell you something else. When the new ammo restrictions go into effect the first week of July, I'll be back. With 2 crates of 7.62 by 39 ball ammunition. And I will transfer said ammunition into the hands of a Connecticut citizen without the state's permission and without any paperwork. And after I break their constitutional laws that are null and void again, I'll be sitting in Frank Pepe's Pizza down in New Haven waiting for Looney and company to come arrest me. Anytime they feel they think they can make it stick, and anytime they feel froggy. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Stewart said, my name is Jim Glider. I'm a retired Connecticut State Trooper. A few words before the oath. There's no way I can be anywhere near as brilliant as Stewart, so I promise to be brief. This is the year 2013. 80 years ago, 1933. One of the most advanced nations in the Western Hemisphere started to evolve into barbarism. Now, I've been a police officer. I started 40 years ago. I'm retired some years now. I think I know pretty much what police feel, and I know in my heart the men of my generation, the men and women of today's generation, do not approve of what's going on. A lot of them can't articulate what's going on. But just as Justice Potter of the Supreme Court said, I may not be able to define pornography, but I sure know when I see it. Police officers can see the creeping statism and tyranny that's occurring in our country as well. Now, the police officers in Germany back in 1933 were probably much the same as the police officers we have here today. They didn't want to be considered superheroes or villains, on the other hand. They were doing a job. They were trying to protect their families, their neighbors, their community. How did they know that in a very short period of time they would be putting people into rail cars and sending them to their deaths? How did that happen? It was a process of gradualism. It's the same kind of process of gradualism we see transpiring today. I'll tell you something else, though. They didn't have that very advanced civilization, and many of the other ones, including Russia and China and the other countries that went the same route. They didn't have that sacred document, the Constitution of the United States. They didn't have the Bill of Rights. That oath that I took 40 years ago, initially in New York City and again subsequently in Connecticut. In Connecticut, I didn't take an oath to Ella Grasso, who was governor at that time. I took an oath to the Constitution. Ella Grasso took that same oath. President Jimmy Carter took that same oath. I don't ask, I demand that we all take that same oath today. Police officers, I challenge not so much the active duty guys. I know you can't speak up. Hold it in your hearts. The retired guys, I challenge you. Step forward. Give us some moral support. We need you. Well, that said, I'd like to proceed to the oath. I'm going to say the word I, and then afterwards you insert your own name. I, James Glider, do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States of America against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and that I will bear true allegiance to the same, that I take this obligation freely, without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion. Pledging my life, my fortune, and my sacred honor, so help me God. Thank you. God bless you all, and God bless America.
Sit rep as
Last night I dreamt about how things were.
Of every enemy of the state!
And then I woke up here.